Emmanuel Acho suits up for a regular season NFL game despite a pain in his thumb. At first, everything is going fine. But then, 3 plays into the game, he hears a pop. Instantly, Acho realizes that he's broken his thumb. And with that, his dream of continuing as a starter for the Philadelphia Eagles is broken too. The doctor confirms Acho's worst fear. The thumb will take over 4 months to heal. After communicating the bad news, he receives a call from the Eagles' general manager and is subsequently released from the squad. Acho realized at that moment that he had a decision to make. He could wait until his thumb healed, continue training, and hope for a call from another team. That was the logical path. And then there was the illogical path. He could pour all of his energy into something completely different, something he had no experience at all in, and change career paths entirely. You can probably guess which choice Acho made. He chose the illogical route, deciding to pursue a career in media. In this blink, we're going to explore what made Acho turn away from the field he knew and was skilled in, and go down instead a risky, unknown path. These blinks are, in the words of Acho, about embracing chance instead of always wondering, what if? Today we're going to bulldoze through limitation and see what lies on the other side. When Acho injured his thumb, it was as if all the fears he had harbored all his life were coming true. The success he had fought tooth and nail to achieve was now at risk of becoming undone. So Acho stole traffic cones from a parking lot in Philadelphia and used them to do drills in the alley behind his apartment. He found empty fields to train in by himself. As you've already learned, it was at this point that Acho realized he needed to make a choice between a logical and an illogical path. But what exactly is logic as he defines it? For Acho, logic is conventional wisdom, and conventional wisdom is made up of all the principles and procedures that the majority of society agrees are sensible. But how sensible are they really? Take, for instance, beauty standards throughout history. For hundreds of years, women have faced societal pressure to conform to constantly changing ideas about what's considered attractive. During the Italian Renaissance, for example, a beautiful woman was one with pale skin, full hips, a full chest, a rounded body, and a high forehead. Think Mona Lisa. Today, on the other hand, these things are all strikes against you. Conventional wisdom doesn't stand the test of time, nor do its standards seem to make much sense. And yet we allow these definitions of beauty and many other things to run our lives. We're constantly longing for things that somebody else has decided that we should value. And that's where illogical comes into play. Acting in a way that is illogical according to conventional standards can often mean living a life that actually makes far more sense for you. In other words, it's about not letting your value, your success, or your greatness be determined by other people. When Acho made this decision to be illogical, he decided to believe there was something more to him than what everyone around him expected. He needed to break his old patterns and find new ones. For him, the logical path would be to stick with football. This is what everyone expected him to do. The illogical path was to pursue a career in media, a career he had never imagined was possible for someone like him, a career he had zero experience or background in. 2 years after Acho had been released from the Eagles, he rejoined them to celebrate the Super Bowl, but not as a player. This time he joined as a television analyst. Then, in 2020, after the murder of George Floyd, Acho received a call from the Eagles' general manager. He knew Acho had been using his platform to speak out against racism, and the manager wanted his advice on a statement the team could release. The path to this point was by no means straightforward. Everyone around Acho felt that playing in the NFL was the opportunity of his lifetime, And giving up on that belief was hard. In order to move on, he had to start thinking and acting against other people's logic. A gambler known as the Kid is sitting at a table in the back room of a casino in Philadelphia. He has more than $20,000 on the table, but he's somehow unfazed. There's one card left to flip over. The Kid has 2 4s in his hand, totaling 8. The dealer has a 10 and an 8, making 18. The point of Blackjack is for your total card value to be at 21, or for you to be closer to 21 than the dealer. The Kid had one last chance, one final card, to beat the dealer. The odds are deeply stacked against him. Only one card in the game, an ace, can win him the game. That gives him a 62% chance of losing, a 31% chance of tying, and only a 7% chance of winning. But he doubles down anyway, meaning that his $20,000 bet will earn him $40,000 in total if he wins. And when his final card is flipped over, it is, you guessed it, an ace. The room goes wild. Of course, the odds weren't in the Kid's favor, but he didn't care. Now, I'm not saying you should go out and start gambling $20,000 like it's nothing, but you can learn a lesson from the Kid's attitude. Even when the odds are stacked against you, you can still own the moment and be confident. Will you take a chance on your dreams despite the supposed success rate? Will you ignore the odds and just go for it? Or will you let logic dictate your every move? You'll never really be ready to start being illogical. But in a way, that means you're ready already. Now is the time. The most important aspect of preparedness is simply our own minds. Each of us has the power to believe, to think for ourselves, to form new opinions about our futures. So, what's next for you? Decide what you're willing to be illogical about. Unearth the stuff that's buried deep down within you that you feel is worth believing in and dedicating yourself to no matter what. At this very moment that you're listening to these blinks, know that you don't need to be smarter, more qualified, or more anything in order to follow your calling. Engage with the childlike or perhaps kid-like faith that you will succeed. Another story to highlight the power of thinking illogically is the story of David and Goliath. It goes like this. According to the Bible, there were 2 nations at war, the Israelites and the Philistines. Goliath was a champion fighter for the Philistines. At over 9 feet high, he was a confident giant. In fact, so confident in his power and ability that he challenged the Israelites to a one-on-one battle. If anyone could defeat him, the Philistines would promise to serve the Israelites. But if they should lose, the Israelites would serve the Philistines instead. There was only one problem. The Israelites were all too scared to take on the giant Goliath. That is, except for one person, a young shepherd named David, who was barely a man. David ended up battling the giant basically by accident. His father had asked him to check on his brothers and bring them food. But when David made it to the front line, he heard Goliath taunting the Israelites, wondering which of them would be brave enough to face him. Even though he was a shepherd by trade, David was a warrior at heart. David decided then and there to run straight at the battle line between him and Goliath. He put his hand in his bag, pulled out a stone and slingshot, and hit Goliath directly on the forehead. Goliath collapsed to the ground. David had won the battle. It may seem like a simple lesson, but it's also a powerful one. Instead of backing away from the 9-foot giant and absorbing the fear that everyone else around him felt, David chose to act upon his own, perhaps illogical belief, a belief that he could succeed. In a similar way, we can either let the fears of the people around us dominate our behavior, Or we can push past the doubt and insecurity of others and act according to our own instinct. Acho had his own David moment after the tragic murder of George Floyd in 2020. He felt he had to speak out. Yet for years, Acho and many others had been warned not to talk about racism in the public eye. There was seemingly never a good moment to do so. Until one day, Acho decided it was time to ignore the fears of other people and pilot an idea that he had for a YouTube show: Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. There were many people who told Acho that he wasn't the right guy to start these conversations. But the racism and police violence that he and others were experiencing was too brutal to ignore. He didn't care anymore whether he lost his audience on social media or whether or not he was the right person. He just needed to speak up, to run at his own battle line, and to act according to his own beliefs. So, if you feel afraid to approach your own battles with similar urgency, take some time to reflect on the following questions. What battles have you won already? What tools are you skilled at using? If your voice is loud and your personality is bold, use that to your advantage. If you're calm and soft-spoken, ask yourself how you can find your own way to succeed through quiet strength and perseverance. In Acho's fight against systemic racism, he never attended a single protest or held up a single sign. Instead, he used his show to express himself. Again, it's not about taking the logical path. It's about finding your own way to fight your own battles. Doubt your doubters, doubt your doubts, and begin by taking action. Acho had two goals in his senior year of high school. One was to become homecoming king, and the other was to win Athlete of the Year. He thought he was a shoo-in for both. But when homecoming nominations came around, he found out that he hadn't even made the list. Why? Because his older brother had won homecoming king the year before, and the school didn't want to create an Acho dynasty. Luckily, he still had a chance to win Athlete of the Year. The night of the award ceremony, his entire family were present. They were dressed to the nines, beaming at him from the front row. Then, the presenter began. The winner for Athlete of the Year is Ben Grizz. Acho was dumbstruck. Perhaps the presenter had misspelled or misspoken his name. How could someone else have possibly beat him for Athlete of the Year? This was his award, the goal he'd been working so hard to achieve. Normally, Acho isn't much of a crier. But this time, the despair was too strong. He wept uncontrollably. He felt as if the award had been ripped directly from his hands. Despite the sorrow of the experience, Acho learned an important lesson, that the easiest way to fail in life is to set a goal. Now, you're probably shaking your head at this idea already. Sure, what happened to Acho sucked, but that doesn't mean goals are bad. And certainly, society and millions of other self-help books out there will tell you that setting goals is the only way to get things done, or to achieve what you want in life. But think about it another way. Setting a goal can end up creating a ceiling for your achievements. In other words, it can prevent you from dreaming higher or dreaming differently. Say you set a goal and achieve it. Awesome. But what if you could have done even more? When you set your mind to a goal, your brain will do everything in its power to achieve it. But it will only work towards that single blinkered goal. For example, you may have heard of the famous athlete Roger Bannister. Prior to 1954, scientists didn't believe it was physically possible for human beings to run a mile in under 4 minutes. But Roger Bannister believed that he could. And turns out he was right. But what if he could have run even faster? What if a 4-minute mile was just an arbitrary cutoff, an unnecessary limitation? The other thing about goals is that not achieving them can be incredibly damaging to your self-worth. If you let a goal become your sole focus in life, then not reaching that goal can lead you to question your whole self, even your existence. So if you're not setting goals, what's the alternative? An objective with no limitations. Now, you may think an objective sounds a lot like a goal, but it's actually quite different. According to Merriam-Webster, an objective is something toward which effort is directed. You're seeking for something, of course, but you're not seeking for a specific defined ending like you are with a goal. When you're chasing your dreams, direct your energy towards achieving an infinite number of outcomes. Think about how much of an impact you can make on the world. When Acho first got into media, people asked him if he wanted to be the next Michael Strahan, but he immediately said no. Michael Strahan achieved a lot, but if Acho only set his sights on being like Michael, then that's as far as he could go. He could never have become what he is now, or created the things he's ended up creating. Acho was attending a rap concert where his friend Toby was performing. The concert was being held at what had been dubbed an intimate venue in New York. And as Acho pretty quickly discovered, mixing intimate and rap music is a pretty bad idea. An hour into the show, Acho's head was starting to ache to the beat. He had to get out of there. But as he was jostling towards the exit, he noticed a mother holding a sleeping child. She was swaying to the music and practically shouting the lyrics to all the songs, all while her child slept quietly on her chest. Acho wondered, how can the kid possibly sleep through all this noise? As he got closer to the two of them, he realized their secret. The child was wearing a pair of large woolly earmuffs, covered up by a sweep of hair. Thanks to them, the child could sleep through one of the loudest concerts that Acho had ever attended. And so, what's the lesson in the story when it comes to your career? Simple. Don't forget your earmuffs. Of course, we're not talking about what gear you should bring with you to the next rap concert you go to. Instead, it's about finding your way through all the noise in the world. When you're doing something that's going to make a big impact, you're bound to hear lots of skeptical criticism, hesitancy, and people trying to hold you back. Acho is no stranger to this. Back in 2020, he was getting ready to record the first ever episode of Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. The day of the shoot, he was already nervous. And then 4 minutes before he was set to record, his phone went off. It was a text from a Black friend and colleague at ESPN who he'd told about his idea a few days prior. She had been hesitant about the show and was texting him on the day of its launch, casting doubt on the project and telling him to hold off. On the inside, Acho began spiraling into a whirlwind of doubt, but he had to make a choice. He could either listen to her doubts and call off the show, or he could put his earmuffs on. In this instance, Acho chose the earmuffs and went ahead with the recording. Ultimately, that first video resulted in 80 million views across social media platforms and paved the way to a #1 New York Times bestselling book. Whenever you're on the verge of doing something truly great, there are going to be people around you whispering in your ear, trying to drown out your own internal voice. That's when you need to make sure that you've got your earmuffs at the ready. Acknowledge that the criticism exists, but don't let it overwhelm you or change your course. In this case, Acho decided to pop on his headphones, ignore the skeptical text, and go ahead with the show. 5 days after the first episode of Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man was released, he was eating Cheerios and scrolling through Twitter, when suddenly, his phone rang, with no caller ID. Early on in his NFL career, Acho had developed a pattern of ignoring calls like these. They usually brought the bad news that players had been cut from the team. And so immediately, Acho feared the worst. A sense of dread and foreboding flooded over him. His whole body protested against him answering that call. But despite the tension, he felt he needed to answer it. To Acho's surprise, the voice on the other end of the line called out chirpily, "McConaughey speaking." Acho sat there still, thinking to himself, McConaughey? Like Matthew McConaughey? And to his even greater surprise, the voice did turn out to be the Matthew McConaughey, award-winning American actor. Fortunately, Acho was able to play it cool. McConaughey told Acho that he had watched the first episode of Uncomfortable Conversations and wanted to have a conversation with Acho as part of the next episode. They spent an hour on the phone running through their ideas, and the very next day, Matthew McConaughey sat down with Acho for episode 2 of Uncomfortable Conversations. Now, think about the opportunity that would have been lost if Acho had decided not to pick up the phone. He'd established a pattern early in his career, one that told him never to pick up unidentified phone calls. And this pattern, this fear, almost triggered him to screen that call. Fortunately, he kept himself open to the possibility that things can always be different. This time could be his chance. And we can all act in similar faith, building the confidence to believe this moment is going to be different from the rest. Believe in yourself and your truth, and in doing so, you open yourself up to the opportunity for greatness. As always, this is about thinking and acting illogically. You've just listened to our blink for Illogical by Emmanuel Acho. Emmanuel Acho decided to set out on an illogical path, a path that defied conventional wisdom, when he decided to pursue a career in media through his YouTube series, Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. Being illogical is all about going against what people expect you to do, and not letting your value be determined by someone else's arbitrary standards. When you're fighting to live your truth by taking the illogical path, charge straight at the battle line. Don't listen to people who doubt you. Set objectives instead of goals, and consciously break free from your old patterns. And here's some actionable advice. Seize your it. When Acho was a kid in school, he spent a lot of time in detention. He challenged his teachers and his peers often. He believed that there were better ways to think and learn, and he was not afraid of saying so. For much of his adult life, Acho thought that playing football was his unique gift, the thing that he was really inherently good at. But in fact, his it was talking. In order to discover what your it really is, it's helpful to take some real-time reflecting. Write down the answers to these questions. What were you naturally skilled at when you were growing up? What did you gravitate towards? Once you've taken the time to find whatever your it is, dedicate yourself to developing the skill constantly. Invest it with your time, money, and resources. No matter how costly it may seem at the time, the payoff will be immense.